Is Red Dead Redemption 2 worth your time in 2021? You've heard the name and most likely played the original, but for whatever reason you haven't picked up Red Dead Redemption 2, or you just want to hear someone's thoughts on it. Red Dead Redemption 2 released in October of 2018, so it's easily the earliest game I've ever reviewed on the channel. We'll be talking narrative and gameplay. Welcome to Classic Game Reviews, where we go back in time and take a look at the games of the past, and today's game is Red Dead Redemption 2.
But it weren't us who changed.
One last thing, if you actually enjoyed the content, you can support the channel by smashing that like button and maybe even sticking around by smashing that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate all support you want to give. There is really nothing I could say that hasn't been said about Red Dead Redemption 2's narrative. It's easily one of the greatest narratives in all of gaming, and it destroys almost all competition. It nails everything a film should be, but puts its narrative in an interactive space while losing almost no immersion, and really made it clear to any who questions gaming's future as a narrative-driven medium that they are wrong, and if given the time, budget and talent, a game can outclass most films or shows in the same genre, and Red Dead Redemption 2 did that for me. I've always loved westerns, and I loved the first Red Dead Redemption game back in 2010 as a small 10-year-old, so if there was ever a game that I wanted during a time of microtransactions and crappy copies of The Witcher 3, it would be Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar delivered a narrative that was far beyond people's expectations, and the expectations were already high. A deep unraveling of an outlaw gang slowly losing their way as they head closer and closer to modern society, the very thing they most fear, and to see them face an end to what they consider freedom, or at least what their leader Dutch considered freedom. This is quite a unique take on the Western idea and is more of a road trip with a Western background, and I loved every second of it. You play as Arthur Morgan, a loyal follower of Dutch, slowly losing faith in the gang that he has dedicated his life towards making sure they prosper. Arthur Morgan is without a doubt the best written character I've ever played as. The depth the writers gave him in just one game can't be spoken of in this video because it would be hours long, but the short of it is he's a complicated individual full of hypocrisy, questions, regrets, and values loyalty above all else. At least he did. A lot of characters get a load of screen time in Red Dead Redemption 2 and are fully fleshed out to their fullest extent. You care for them even though you know exactly how this story has to end, and it's done in such a way you can't help but be speechless by the time the end credits roll. Complicated character-driven stories are the heart of this game, and it's done almost flawlessly. However, there are some negatives. Red Dead Redemption 2 simply cannot flesh out every single character they introduce due to the game's already insane length, so some characters do end up getting pushed to the side. Most notably, most of the women and the villains, especially the villains. The story is about the gang, so the villains really don't get a lot of screen time to flesh them out, because the unreal villain throughout this game is right in front of you. So I think it's okay not to flesh out the Pinkertons, mainly because they're kind of just there to be the antagonist, but it would have been nice.
Nice.
The pacing also takes a hit around the midway point as you realise that the whole game will be very similar in terms of the things you do, but with an increase in scale slowly over time. For example, one minute you're robbing a small house for a guy's wagon, and the next you're robbing a full-on established bank in the middle of a giant city. But between those moments, the game slows down significantly, so if you can't get invested into those characters, then you would definitely struggle to get through the game in its entirety. My final thoughts on the narrative will be just after the gameplay section. This is when a game struggles to hold people on for 50 hours, just like The Witcher 3. The gameplay here is absolutely solid, but is extremely repetitive. There is a lot to do and a lot of different interactions with the people or AI of Red Dead Redemption 2, which keeps things fresh most of the time. But the gameplay really hasn't been improved since the release of GTA 5. It is very GTA 5, but much slower and a worse cover system. That is how I can describe the gameplay. Now, before you grab your Western pitchforks, it's not bad gameplay. I just wish Rockstar would have spent more time innovating gameplay rather than just focusing on narrative and the different mini interactions you can have, so the gameplay loop was more satisfying. I also thought Deadeye was downgraded significantly. I know Rockstar was really aiming for the whole photorealistic style, but I preferred the first Red Dead Redemption for its shootouts without a doubt. It sounds weird, but it was more of a game, whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 is more an interactive movie, and that's okay. Those games have their place, but they definitely need to innovate, as it's the only genre I haven't seen innovate this entire generation. Naughty Dog is also at fault for this because yes, their games are prettier now, but the gameplay for both Uncharted and The Last of Us was the exact same as the previous entries, just prettier. And every year graphics get less and less important due to the amount of games that are just blowing it out of the water. However, there is still a lot to do in Red Dead Redemption 2. You can spice it up with some hunting and fishing, maybe go do a bounty or help out the gang at the camp, and even play some poker and then cry because you're bad at it and then shoot everyone in there. All of this you could do in the first Red Dead Redemption apart from the gang elements, but it's all been improved with Red Dead Redemption 2 mainly because of the improved AI interactions, which causes it to feel more real and random. The hunting is also a viable way to earn money as well, so it actually gives you a reason to do it, as well as the crafting elements, and despite their mediocre implementation. There isn't a lot of weapons either for selection, and that really harms the longevity of the game, so once you've beaten the game it's very difficult, at least for me, to replay it due to the repetitive nature of Red Dead Redemption 2's mechanics, and the guns really don't spice it up. One shoots a bit slower than the other. That's pretty much it. This also killed Red Dead Online for me due to the lack of content and overall satisfaction I got from the gameplay. Red Dead Redemption 2 mastered the way games can tell character-driven stories while avoiding the typical gamey elements that ruin the immersion, and while that does limit the mechanics Rockstar can implement to keep things fresh and offer a satisfying loop, I still think it's a great game in its own right. Red Dead's story is almost flawless while having pacing issues. It's still one of the best stories I've ever seen told in the gaming medium. Red Dead Redemption 2 is without a doubt an absolute classic. Thank you for watching.